I say in the book, throw out your house plants. Like if it's stressing you out to water them and the fact that they're dying, and by the way, mine are behind me and they absolutely are dying. Look at that sad house plant. Throw away. Like you don't actually have to feel guilty trying to, chase an ideal that's not working for you in any domain of your life. And obviously that's a metaphor, right? It could be travel soccer. That's what you need to throw away. It could be the job that, you invested in, you thought was going to make you feel successful. And now, it's not paying off the way that you hoped, or it's a labor of love. And you're like, maybe I'd like to get paid in money instead of love, right? So the book is about giving yourself permission to cut loose some of those choices that aren't working.
Welcome back to the Well Woman Show, the space where we lead with ease, live with joy, and build lives that actually reflect who we are. I'm your host, Giovanna Rossi, and this March, we are celebrating 10 years of this show on National Public Radio and this community, and I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for watching, for sharing, and for showing up. Showing up for yourself and for this community. This show exists because of you, and there's no better way to mark 10 years together than with a conversation like this one. Our guest today, Dr. Corinne Low, is a Wharton economist, professor, and author of the best-selling book, Having It All: What Data Tells Us About Women's Lives and Getting the Most Out of Yours. Dr. Low brings together rigorous research and real-life experiences as a mom of two, a tenured professor, and a woman who's navigated the messy, the beautiful, the imperfect reality of trying to do it all. Does that sound familiar? This is something we talk about a lot on the Well Woman Show and in the Well Woman community. And by the way, I'm taking a sip of my tea from my fabulous Well Woman cup. Hold on. And I just busted out all the old merch for our 10-year anniversary, and it's been really fun. In this conversation, we dig into why women today are more overwhelmed than ever, how to use a surprisingly simple economic framework to align your time with what you actually value, and how to create a career and life that works for you across every season of your life. And if you lead a team or run a business, Dr. Low has something for you too. Practical, evidence-based guidance on what employers can do right now to create workplaces where women don't just survive, but thrive. This episode is for every woman, every leader who knows something has to change. As always, all the links and information can be found at wellwomanlife.com/356show. And Dr. Low will be the keynote speaker at the Family Friendly Business Awards luncheon of April 30th. And you can get more information about that at familyfriendlynm.org. So let's dive into my interview. I'm speaking with Dr. Corinne Low today. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. So we're going to get into a whole lot today, including your new book, which I have right here, which we'll talk about. But first of all, Dr. Low, I just really want you to share with listeners, who are you in the world today?
So I am an economist. I'm a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a mom of two, and I'm the author of Having It All, which we're going to talk about.
Okay. And so how old are your kiddos?
I have an 8-year-old and a 9-month-old.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I
Yeah.
think I knew that, but I think that information didn't settle, because that's amazing that you're doing it all and you're having it all. Or are you? Right? Like, let's have that conversation today.
That's what we'll talk about. It's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, where are you in your career, like, trajectory? Like, are you, and how are you incorporating, like, being a mom and parenting, and
Yeah.
also, like, what your goals are with your career? Like, how do you keep up with, because in academia, it's no joke. Like, you have to keep up with the research and the publishing, right, in order to progress. So kind of give listeners a feel for sort of that whole
Well,
thing.
it's interesting because when I had my son, who's now 8, I was pre-tenure. I was on the tenure track, and I was actually commuting. I was commuting 2.5 hours, from New York to Philadelphia, and I was, like, feeling what I call the squeeze when, home pressures and work pressures collide at the same time, and so that time I really was feeling that, the pressure of publish or perish, and that, like, in academia, if you don't get tenure, it's not just, "Oh, you don't get a promotion," it's that you have to leave. You have to find a new job. You have to find a job in a new city usually. So,
Right.
definitely I was feeling that stress. And then, when I had my second, I'm in a different place in my career. I have tenure, so I have some job security. And so I think I was going into it kind of smug because I was like, "Oh, I've figured out a lot of the things that were hard in my, first with my first child, my first marriage, and with this commute that wasn't working and being early career, and now it's gonna be easier." But then I decided to write a book the same year that I had a baby. And I'm still doing a lot of juggling. So, like, today I'm leaving on a trip and I'm heartbroken about leaving my, 9-month-old, even though I thought it was gonna get easier as she got older. But I feel like it's harder now because she understands I'm gone, but doesn't understand that I'm gonna be back soon.
Mm.
And we're trying to logistically figure out, like, did somebody this just happened, put dirty dishes away because we accidentally didn't communicate that, like, somebody had already loaded the dishwasher, and so the dishes in the dishwasher weren't clean. Um, and, just, trying to make it all add up. So, in some
Yeah.
ways, it does get easier, and then, in other ways, no matter what point in your career you are, it's a challenge to balance it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say I have 2 kids, and I had a very high pressure job when I had my first, and I was juggling all the things, right? And all of that. So I absolutely hear you. I also, similar to you, I was working professionally in a similar area as I was struggling in personally, right? Like challenging or balancing all of that or not balancing it, juggling it all.
Mhm.
And so, and so I think you're doing that too, right? Like you're experiencing this personally and you're also writing about it and shedding light on it for a lot of other people who are living it.
Yeah.
But your book is not only and your work is not only for individuals and people like us who are like, "Ah, how do we do it all?" It's also for other people to understand how to um adjust and be flexible and like create an environment where people like us can thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a first for individuals, I try to use the tools of, my discipline, which is economics, to figure out how we can find the things that are most important to us and radically prioritize when things aren't adding up. And, I talk about, again, for individuals, like thinking about your job as a way to turn your time into money, but also understanding that because you are putting time into your job to turn into money, that then you can turn that money back into time again. And that, sometimes as women, we have to, remember to do that and remember that that's not wasteful or a luxury, that that's, a necessity of investing in our careers. But you're right that I think, there's societal things that don't add up that make it harder for women than it needs to be, making it harder for working parents in general, which is that so many of our careers are built around a ideal that doesn't exist anymore, which is a man with a stay-at-home wife. And, that's just the majority of households are two-earner households these days and or are female-headed. So we don't have that luxury of assuming that, like, you can have the worker 110% of the time because somebody else is gonna take care of all the details.
Yes, exactly. And so I'm really interested before we dig into some of the actual data and solutions that you're suggesting, just kind of high level, like, do you think that your work takes the current model and tries to make it work for the rest of us? Or are you suggesting a new model? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, I think that my book is about giving women agency within a system that is in many ways broken and saying, well, then I'm not going to ask you to lean in. I'm not going to ask you to lean into that broken system and just, um, hold yourself to the standard of your male colleagues, even though you are not coming to the table with, the same benefits that they have. So the book is about acknowledging the realities and, like I said, putting women back in the driver's seat of their lives to say, like, no, you actually get to make choices about how to make this work for you. And I'm not going to judge you or, say that that you're failing feminism if you don't decide to try to get the corner office or try to make partner, amid this system that really isn't working. That's what the book is. My work, more broadly, is absolutely about trying to change that system, right? But I think I didn't wanna write the book that said, "Here's all the policy changes," because that would leave us as women then feeling like, "Okay, well, then I'm screwed. I'm stuck," right? So, I wanted to write the book that acknowledged the external reality being very, very broken, but then gave women tools to improve their lives subject to those constraints, which is, in economics, that's how we think about maximization. You're always maximizing subject to constraints. And in some ways, those constraints, the boundaries on your life, are what help us make choices because when you look at some of these like billionaires who are just like crazy and spending money like going into space, right? When you don't have constraints, you can feel really lost and rudderless. And so, seeing the constraints in our life is sort of some parameters that we need to work around, but then really seeing ourselves as having agency and empowerment within those parameters to find our maximum and find the things that are most important to us. And like I said, throw out the rest, radically prioritize. I say in the book, throw out your house plants. Like if it's stressing you out to water them and the fact that they're dying, and by the way, mine are behind me and they absolutely are dying. Look at that sad house plant. Throw away. Like you don't actually have to feel guilty trying to, chase an ideal that's not working for you in any domain of your life. And obviously that's a metaphor, right? It could be travel soccer. That's what you need to throw away. It could be the job that, you invested in, you thought was going to make you feel successful. And now, it's not paying off the way that you hoped, or it's a labor of love. And you're like, maybe I'd like to get paid in money instead of love, right? So the book is about giving yourself permission to cut loose some of those choices that aren't working.
Okay, I love that so much because that's so in line with what we talk about here on the Well Woman Show. Um, but it is challenging because a lot of our listeners are high achievers, like big, creative, like making things happen at all different levels and juggling caregiving in multiple lots of ways, right? And and there's some perfectionism that comes with that we're socialized as women to say, we have to do it perfectly. Otherwise, we're not going to be competitive in the ways that other people are. And so when we say like, listen, if the house plant's not working for you, toss it, or like the club soccer, I totally relate to that. I'm a club soccer mom. Um, but it's sort of like, how do we create the environment where women feel like saying yes to that? Like, oh yeah, I could do that. Because there's so much resistance, like, oh, I can't, like, I can't give anything up. I can't say no. I can't, like, I have, no boundaries because I just have to do everything perfectly and be everything to everybody and meet everyone's expectations. And it's a lot of pressure. And so, do you address any of that?
Absolutely. The book addresses all of that, right? Because that's the issue is that that's not serving us. So the model that we can be this like super 80s corporate career woman and an Instagrammable trad wife, those are two separate full-time jobs that do not fit in one 24-hour day. And so that is we are authoring our own unhappiness by chasing this ideal in both domains, right? In the
Yeah.
career domain, comparing ourselves to our male colleagues when we literally have fewer hours in our day than they do, right? And then in the home domain, comparing ourselves to the moms of the past who were not intensively parenting the way that we are, because the time that mothers spend with their kids has doubled across a
Yeah.
generation, or the moms we see on Instagram where that what they're modeling as aesthetic domesticity actually is their careers, right? And you're every bit as good at your career as they are at cutting the sandwiches out of their into shapes so they can make bento box lunches for their kids, right? But because you are trying to do both, you can't do that. And so what's revealing about the economic framework in the book, where I talk about maximizing your utility function, and your utility function is what you value in life, what you think is important, is that it lets you understand that the reason you don't have what she has on Instagram is because your utility function is different. So it reframes it as a choice to say, actually, you could have more career success. If you wanted to put all of your resources, all of your energy into your career could be more successful. If you wanted that well-appointed, beautiful, spotless home, you could do that. You could have that. But there would be trade-offs, right? And there are trade-offs
Mhm.
that you're not willing to make because that's not in your utility function. So when you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you're comparing yourself with somebody with actually a different set of values than you, not just a different set of resources. Sometimes different resources too, but also a different set of values. And then you say to yourself, and you have to keep having this conversation with yourself. And I literally have to keep having it, right? When I feel that ping of jealousy of like, oh, someone else has achieved this thing I wish I could achieve, I have to have the conversation myself to say, yes, if I wanted to put all of my time into that, I probably could achieve something like that thing. But I don't want to do that. That's not where my values are right now. That's not where my heart is right now, right? Right now, I'm feeling torn because I'm going on a work trip and, I have a baby, right? That's not where my heart is right now. And the same with the beautiful things in the house or,
Yeah.
our kids with the cute outfits and the, 60 ingredient dinners on a weeknight, right? Again, you could do that, but it would come with a tremendous cost. And so you've made a choice, and that's okay. You've got to own the choice and repeat it back to yourself as a choice to pursue your utility function rather than as something that you're stuck with or something that you're failing at.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love that. That's a really great perspective and context for that understanding and for like actually using that. um I'm speaking with Dr. Lowe. We're talking about having it all or maybe not having it all, right? Like isn't that sort of also the point here? Like
Yeah.
and I think it is hard to say like, okay, I do want a career and I do want a family, but maybe I can't have like 100% of both at the same time. Or maybe it's I can I can have some of, what I want over here while I do something over here. So it's a lot of like trade-offs and compromises, right? But I think we need to have these conversations in community, is what I have found through hundreds of interviews with women leaders who are juggling and trying to have it all or not trying to have it all. Um, and so having these conversations in community is really important so that we don't feel isolated with these decisions.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And, and what you said about reframing having it all, in the book, I talk about having it all most. And I think that that's the version that, is realistic for us, for these, working moms in the 2020s, where again, we are spending twice as much time with our kids as a generation ago. So it's like, yeah, maybe our parents' house looked nicer, or maybe it didn't, but maybe we have this fantasy of the past. And it's like because they weren't reading us bedtime stories, right? Because we were out biking until the sun went down.
Yeah.
So, I think it is saying, and it's a group effort in the sense that you don't want to just feel like you're the only one who's opting out, right? And so it's like, how do you find a community of like-minded people who are going to say no to the club soccer or going to say no to some of these other unrealistic standards that aren't working? And how do you find a community that supports you? And that's one of the big changes in the book that I mentioned is for me moving from Manhattan to Philadelphia. That was what I call like a level up, where it actually changed the constraints that I was facing. That when I was trying to maximize my utility, you're hitting these walls, and those are the constraints that you face. And for me, it was that Manhattan was just so expensive that everything felt impossible. And I couldn't really afford the childcare that I actually needed to do my job living in such an expensive city. And also with my commute, but that was another story. But so moving to a cheaper city for me actually unlocked new possibilities. But one of the most important things about it is that I found a community that supported me. And so when I've been on book tour, I've had neighbors who were walking my 8-year-old to school. I have people who pick my son up like after school today because I'm going on a work trip. Someone's picking him up and they're doing a play date, right? So we are trying to do it all and we're trying to do it all alone. And I
Mhm.
think the structure of our communities and of, life changing, one thing is like our parents helping us. Generations get stretched out, and now mom and dad actually need care at the same time as we have young kids, rather than them, being spry and 20 years older than us and coming over and helping the kids, right? So the structure of our society has changed in a lot of ways that make this harder. And so I think to claw back that having it almost, it's making peace with it being imperfect, but it's also trying to make some structural changes for ourselves by
Yeah.
rebuilding that community that supports us so we don't have to do it all alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing, like, being okay with asking for help, right? Asking for support, and that's not, unusual or like looked down upon. Um, but Dr. Lowe, I want to ask you, in terms of, so we've been talking about a lot of things that we can do as individuals, and that's great. But I think there's a role also for government and for business community. And so let's take the business community for an example. You're going to join us at the Family Friendly
Mhm.
Awards luncheon in a month or so. And there's going to be a lot of employers in the room and business owners. And I'm just curious, what do you say to those folks in terms of what they can be doing to also create an environment where their employees can thrive?
Yeah, I think business owners need to be evidence based. And when you look at the evidence, Um, the data says that women benefit a lot from structure and predictability. And those words are different than a lot of the words that we hear thrown around because we often hear people talk about flexibility and work from home. And those can be great if you're able to offer them. But if your business is a business where, you feel like, okay, I can't offer work from home, where it's in person, requires customer service, or requires working as a team, I don't think that means that you should write women off because nursing, which is a profession that is fundamentally in office because you have to, conduct it at the point of care with the person that you're caring for, is more than 80% female. It's almost 90% female. And the reason it works for women, even though it's highly inflexible and it's work in the office, is because it's structured and it's predictable. So you know when you're on and you know when you're off. And you might be on call, but it's a scheduled on-call shift, so you know that you can or you need to arrange backup childcare when you're on call. And so
Yeah.
women's choices are telling us that that's what they need in a work environment, structure and predictability. And so the question is, how do you offer that? How do you offer, a work environment where you say, okay, it's not going to be, anybody can get called into the office at any time. It's going to be, we're going to actually schedule who's on hand to deal with client emergencies, and we're going to rotate that through our teams. Or how do you say, look, we want the benefit of in office work, but really we only need that just so we can work as a team and we can do some of that creativity together. So we're going to have core in office hours from 10 to 6. But if we need people to work a longer day than that, they're going to be able to choose, where do they put that remaining, 2 to 3 hours of their workday. Sorry, I meant to say 10 to 4. I said 10 to 6. That sounds a little long. Core in office hours of 10 to 4, and
Yeah.
then, that's, not a typical full day, and then maybe you have, an additional hour where for the younger people, for Gen Z, it's they just prefer to get it done and then go out for drinks and, happy hour with their friends and be done for the day, and for people with kids, it's they're done at 4, they wanna go pick up their kids, but they're gonna log back on after bedtime at 8, and that's when they're gonna finish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you're in a customer service job where you say, "No, I need people here and I need them here at different hours of the day," it's just putting up the schedule a month in advance so that you're not making people scramble for last minute childcare, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it might cost you in the sense that you're like, "Okay, then I scheduled and it turns out I had a little bit of duplication because I had too many people working on a Sunday that turned out not to be busy," or whatever it is, right? But it is going to cost you less than constantly having to recruit new employees because it's not working for your employees
Yeah.
and their caregiving
Yeah.
responsibilities. So
Yeah.
recruiting talent and is expensive. Retaining talent is expensive, and structure and predictability is a cheaper way to do that.
Yeah, and it's so counterintuitive for a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, but that's gonna be so hard." And it, it can be challenging, but it can be done. And we see that with a lot of the businesses that we recognize with the Family Friendly Business Award. And one of our core policies is predictable scheduling, and not just for, but also for like service industry workers and folks who need to plan childcare and transportation, all of that. So, well, we really look forward to seeing you April 30th at the Family Friendly Business Awards. You're going to be our keynote speaker. And Dr. Low, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Giovanna.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, follow us on Instagram at Well Woman Life. And don't forget, you can catch the show on NPR anytime. Just head to npr.org/podcasts and search for The Well Woman Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave us a quick review. It really helps others find the show. I always love hearing from you, so drop a comment or message me on socials at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.